Okay. And then, Juliet, is the idea you might want to start by 3 or earlier than 3 for the rest of the workshop?
I think we can take a short break after like questions with you, and then we can start. But I mean, it's like, yeah, that's fine. Take your time.
Okay. Let's see. I'm going to. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just go along with the introduction round because I think it's a great segue into my talk. My relationship to role play, as I think it was Lama said, that I, as a child, did a lot of role play. I think most of us did. And so I think there's a certain aspect of role play that we're all hopefully familiar with. I can't say that it's universal, but the idea that you might have played families, mother and daughter, like cops and robbers, or the 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 whole mechanics of role play is pretty, I think, primal to the human existence. And I actually was reading in the Unheard Voice, or in an Unheard Voice by Peter Levine, he developed the somatic experiencing. It's a therapy experience. He talked about how, or a therapy module. He talks about how in the wild, like he gives the example of lions, these baby lions being chased by an adult male lion. And there's this whole physiological process. They run up a tree and escape this male lion who's trying to attack them. And then there's this physiological process afterwards that they go through where they kind of shake and kind of discharge the stress of the situation and the adrenaline. And then after that, they pretend that chasing each other. So they rehearse different ways to escape. And so he was actually emphasizing the discharge, the physical discharge, because that's the work of somatic experiencing. But then I was also really fascinated that it goes hand in hand. The role play goes afterwards. And he also gives the example of, like, you have a fight or an accident or something, and then afterwards you kind of go over the situation in your head over and over again, and you like rehearse different things that you might have said or different things you would do differently. And so in that way, we're using our imagination to kind of role play. So there's, I think, on many different levels, there's some real
Oh, Susan, you muted yourself.
Was I muted the whole time? Okay, good.
No.
I don't know what happened. Okay, so I don't know how long. Anyways, role play fulfills a lot of needs for people, and I've always been into pretend play as a child, sort of as an adult, and I was doing performance, and I got really frustrated with the. Well, I was doing performance and I had some elements of audience participation, and then I got frustrated with the imbalance of agency between me as the artist and performer and my audience participants, and also as an audience member myself, feeling a little like not always a willing participant and not feeling like there was a lot of consent in it. And also I felt like I wanted to give my audience an experience, and I feel like as a performer you really overestimate how much it is you're actually giving to the audience in terms of your emotional state. And that was really what I was interested in, not like how my body looked on stage necessarily, or the text really. So I did a workshop with another set of artists, Brody Condon, an American who has used LARP in his work before, and Nina Essendrop, who is a Danish artist, a LARP designer, who's really known for her non-verbal LARPs. And I was just blown away by these techniques that they were giving. One was a sex simulation technique, actually, that we weren't using to simulate sexual experiences, but sort of like romantic encounters that we had just using the hands and the arms. And for me, so my background also includes doing a somatic training. I've been very interested in like embodied techniques and mind-body centering kinds of things for a while. And it was really fascinating to me that there was this whole other community called Nordic LARP or progressive LARP that was devising these tools, these storytelling tools and interaction tools from techniques, exercises we would do in a somatics class with a really different aim. So in somatics, we might be touching each other's arms or touching our own arms to like feel the tissues or release tension, things like this. Maybe even to get into the psychological material that might be involved there, perhaps. But like that there was this other community that had this kind of fictional experience layered on top of a very real physical experience just blew my mind. And so I started investing a lot of time into Nordic LARP, figuring out what it is, and I learned how to do it as a design form in 2016 from a really great group of LARPers, and I've been making LARPs ever since. I wanted to show this PDF of Nordic LARP, but just so, because a lot of you have mentioned that you don't feel like you have so much experience in role play, I just wanted to give a few examples of that. I'll just share my entire screen. And can you guys see this PDF?
Yes.
Okay.
It's coming.
Okay. Can you see it? There should be like a man.
Yes.
The
yes.
Hat on. Okay, great. So Nordic LARP, I'm not so thrilled with the name because it really centers it in a geographical location that I don't really feel like is totally accurate. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, but now we see your Gmail loading.
I know, it's so annoying. Let's see. Talk about tools. Okay.
Yes,
okay, can
now
you
we're
see
in
the
that.
PDF?
Yes.
Okay, it's somehow, I think because the file is so big, actually, it's not sharing it very well. Okay, well, we don't have so much time for this, so, oh no. Can you still, oh, why is it opening Brave? Okay, sorry. You can still hear me?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
we can hear you.
Oh,
we can see now. We can see like a cascade of.
Okay. Okay. I just stopped sharing my screen, I think. Okay, good. Okay. I will leave it up to you guys to do your own research on Nordic LARP. But that basic idea, I think I would love for you to take away from it is it's not just in the Scandinavian countries, but they have really documented their work and their design techniques and kind of tried to spread them around the globe. So I think there's a certain aspect to give them props for that. But there's different kinds of LARPing happening all over the world in different places. There's different genres. There's different ways to LARP. Like China, there's like a bonkers like LARP industry in China now over the last 2 or 3 years, but it's a weird combination of escape rooms and murder mystery theater dinner plays. But LARPing for me is role play combined with game mechanics, and these game mechanics, I think it started off being influenced by tabletop role play, but then Nordic LARP and other forms have taken it into a space that's more about co-creation instead of combat or competition. It's more about exploring the inner life of a character or social dynamics or experiencing a different reality than you're used to. And I think what's also really interesting about at least Nordic LARP and other scenes like it is that they are very interested in open source, kind of as a guiding principle. So, they're happy that people borrow techniques from different LARPs, different mechanisms. They share their scripts online. So if you all want to try out a Nordic LARP, there's a website called Chamber LARPs, I believe, and you can download a script and run them with your friends. And they publish a lot, again, like I said, about theory and different techniques. It's a very big part of who they are as a community. And I also think they're interesting because they're like a design community. So they also design communities. And so they kind of make communities through design and through play. And then they're also very actively engaged in designing their community to be better, to be more inclusive, to reflect the values that they hold dear, I guess. And these of late have been kind of intersexual feminist principles. So that I find really interesting. And there's also some idea of like the design of design, that there's like an aesthetic to like how you decide to design something. And and just that the tools that they work with, like facilitation and like kind of behavioral tools and interaction tools, like these are all tools too, and these are all technologies. And this is something that in my work I find very important, looking at what is maybe not normally thought of as technologies, these kind of social tools, social design, and also embodied design and embodied tools. So I think LARP for me really bridges a lot of different things I was looking for as an artist. I call myself an artist. I don't really know if I am anymore, but and it's also designing for the agency of the participants, not just the designers, so that there's more of a level field between the designers and the people kind of engaging in what has been designed. Thanks, Juliet, for putting that link in there. Let's see. It's such a short time. I just wanted to briefly show a bit of my own work. I don't know if you can make it big, or if I make it big, then everyone has it big. But if you want to get a bigger look at the pictures, you can. I'm just going to briefly go into this. I can't see the questions anymore on the side, so I'll just have to answer them later if you have questions. Also, if I'm talking too fast, please let me know, and just ask me to slow down or explain anything that you don't understand. This is a LARP that I created I wanted to create a LARP with robots in it. And for me, what's really interesting, what's core to my work in a lot of ways, is the role of imagination in the cognitive kind of landscape or ecosystem that it is cognition in a lot of ways. And that it is embodied. So imagination is embodied. It's comprised of sensual information. These are in the body, of course. And then I look at threads like that in certain technologies. I've worked a lot with AI and robotics, And this is kind of a continuation of that. And I initially wanted to have a LARP that was just robots, and I think I will still make it someday, but I haven't yet. And this was more of an encounter between these soft robotics. And if you don't know what soft robotics are, they're usually made from soft materials like silicone, or it could be paper even, or plastics. And they're usually they're soft, so they're able to move in a different way. And it's a lot about their movement, not so much about their computational qualities, although there are people working on that as well, like material that also computes. And I just wanted to have an encounter where you didn't know it was a robot or not. And it was kind of this object, this foreign object, and then the people in the LARP LARPed as aliens, like not necessarily aliens like aliens in the movies or like aliens with tentacles necessarily, but just alien to the environment that they were in. And I worked with a roboticist, Jonas Jorgensen, and we actually framed this as a research project. And we wrote a paper. If you're curious about the paper, I can send it to you later if you want. And also interested in looking at LARP as a form of research, potentially, or a form of experiment design. I don't know how well it works for that. I kind of got a crash course into research design, but I I think it works better as like a collaborative design and an iterative design process, which I think is something that there needs to be more of. There are people working on this, and this is again like the design of design or the aesthetics of design. Um, yeah, and if you're a designer, I guess you might already know about people working to um, bring in the people who actually might use something into the actual design or the research into the thing. Here's a LARP called Xenosomatics, or the Guild, I sometimes call it, and it's based on Xenogenesis by Octavia Butler. And here again, the participants are playing aliens, but I really wanted to not recreate the aliens visually and instead have the participants use their imagination. So again, like imagination is this huge, powerful tool, and something I think that is quite frequently overlooked. And I think, oh, and another thing I was exploring with this LARP was a technique where I had people map the characteristics of the aliens and the humans and their fears and hopes and dreams onto their body. And then the aliens, so I don't know if anyone's read these books, they're fantastic. You should read them. And the aliens are just very highly sensitive. Their senses are very strong, and they're also incredible healers. They have all these kind of extraordinary powers that humans don't have, and they're healers. So the aliens, so you can see in this picture, there's an alien kind of touching, doing some like hands-on. I think it's healing in this in this picture. And then the aliens also, I hope they did. It was a game technique so that they passed information from one participant to the other. So the information of their hopes and fears of aliens and humans would be passed somatically, like through the hands and through different parts of their body, and just allowing for this really pointedly embodied, imaginative realm for story creation, character creation, and development. It's my favorite LARP that I've written in this form, and I would love to run it again. And here's some more pictures of them. And here in the bottom is someone, I think it's an alien, with one of the charts, the maps of someone's different zones. So it's a meta technique, and a meta technique, meta means that it's off game, and it's a technique meant to enhance play in some way, and it's something that you interact with as a player and not necessarily as a character. So there is this kind of imaginary and but real division between the player and the character. And this also, if you were a child and did role plays, you know, like the time that you spend negotiating the terms of play, like the rules, or like where the prison is, or no, you can't kill me, I'm not dead. Like that kind of stuff is also like meta space, or not a form of meta technique. It's not so formalized, I think, but if that helps you conceive of what a meta technique is, I hope that helps. And then I've done a few different LARPs around AI, and also the connections between AI and robotics. And here I did one on using my training from somatics and developmental movement, and combining that with developmental robotics, and how developmental psychology is being used to develop kind of like smart robotics, or like robots. Well, for example, like developmental psychology has learned that learning words and vocabulary and retaining them in the memory is positional. It depends on where the thing is and how your body is, and where you see it. And so I just wanted to bring in a very like embodied experience of a developmental movement that then is it linked to developmental psychology, but not, I don't know how many developmental psychologists work with that. And then see if then we played designers and robots in this LARP, and kind of designed somatically these different robots of different kinds of physicalities, and different kinds of cognitive systems. So like a two-brained AI or robot, or a robot that had like kind of sensors and kind of neurons all over the body, like maybe more like an octopus or something. And so I was really interested, I am still interested in LARPing as a prototyping tool. And instead of like a pencil and paper kind of prototyping, that we really use our bodies um, and our imaginations to design and prototype. I think that's it for my slides ish. Oh, I did another one with kind of trying to actually really use trying to develop a somatic coding language. I don't know how successful it was, but it was pretty fun, and I had really great participants. Um, but also working with like qualitative data or information, and a sort of kind of protocol, like an embodied protocol. Yes, and here they are attempting to be these weird somatic sensory kind of robot beings. Yeah, anyways, I think that's it for me, and I would love to take questions if there are any. I know that was.
Thank you.
Oh, I wanted to say one more thing. I've really been more and more thinking about storytelling, and it also is such a like core part of our cognitive experience and memory, and so I think that's in there too, but I haven't done much writing or like elaboration on that. But I think it's just much more important part of my work than I've given it I don't know, attention to yet.
Thank you so much, Susan, for giving us this fast track into all these different projects that are like super inspiring.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to jump back for questions, you can just put your mic on or also write questions if you don't want to speak up because it's intimidating because we're recording, but you can remain anonymous if you want. I can ask a question in the meantime.
Yeah.
Do you like because you didn't show one of the LARPs that I was part of.
Oh yeah.
Do you wanna say something about the last one? I thought it was really interesting. This the one that we did in what's Punverre. Um,
Sasanel.
yeah,
Or no, that
no, it
last
was not
one,
Sasana. No,
Somatech.
yeah, yeah,
So
that
that's
was interesting.
Patricia also did a form of that. I have to say it's the most difficult LARP. It just needs to be longer, and also, I mean, both you and Patricia could say something about it, but this one, yeah, I think it is going more into like how storytelling is also a part of memory. I'm trying to work with mnemonic techniques and also remote viewing or sensing techniques as a way of like the kind of backbone of a new society or subculture. And I have been doing a lot of research into indigenous knowledge production and knowledge retention, let's say, for lack of a better word. And these are very multisensory, they're very embodied, there's lots of storytelling and using kind of space and story and imagination and feelings as a way to store knowledge and reproduce it and pass it down. And I think for Soma Tech, the world is a world in which computational technologies don't exist anymore. There's no more cell phones, no more computers, and so it's these people trying to like kind of either form new technologies or maybe find this connection back to these technologies that are very vivid, very potent, very old. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it needs more work and it needs to be longer. Like, and maybe it just needs to be a society. Like, it needs to be kind of a speculative institution that is, you know,
For
speculative
weeks.
material. Yeah, for weeks and months.
Anya, you want to ask a question?
Yes, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Maybe two questions. One, I'm just curious, like how usually sort of a lab becomes gets its shape. Like, is it usually that you have an idea or a plan, or is there also something that's really like context or site specific about the labs you create? And then another question I had was about documentation. I think it's something with Hackers and Designers we've been always interested in, but also struggling with, like how to make a workshop sort of, yeah, how to preserve it in a way that is not just yeah, showing happy faces like, oh, that was so great, we had a great time, too bad you couldn't make it, or like, and then we came up with this idea of the workshop script, which has like narrative things that we never really resolved, I think, documentation. So I was
Yeah.
curious, like, how, if that's important to you at all, or if you've
Yeah.
thought about it.
That's a great question. I actually do have one more slide with a script that I published in a book. I don't. Yeah, I have some of it here actually. Um, that's I feel like many questions. Yeah. So how a LARP takes shape for, I mean, and any LARP designer has their own process, like any artist or any designer does. What find helpful about Nordic LARP and kind of being trained in those tools is that there's the workshopping phase where all the participants gather together and rehearse the tools of the LARP. They make their characters or get some practice being their character. They make relationships, and everyone kind of agrees to the rules of the world, the fictional world, and then also like the terms of play and how we're going to interact with each other as players and as characters. And there's some God, not coalition, I can't remember the word, but you get on the same page, and that to me is just a really potent practice. Like how many times do we actually do that in any part of our life, like it's in groups especially. Like and so there's the workshops phase, there's the actual like LARP play where you're in the world fictionally, and then there's usually a debrief section at the end where people can come back and talk about their experiences and what happened, and they can write about their experience. There's different debriefing tools then as well. So I actually then have like 3 phases to design, plus the kind of para-LARPing, you know, the advertising, the like, you know, like it's all experience design. Every single part of it is a part of the experience. I think that's probably obvious from an experience design layer. I think I start with like a question I want to explore with people, and I don't have an answer to the question, and I want to see what other people do with the question. I think that's basically it. Like for somatics, when I was reading Octavia Butler, I was like, wow, they sound like somatic educators. Like they sound like what they do is like what we're aiming for, and kind of like what we're training ourselves to do, or what they are. I mean, it's more fantastical in the book. So I wanted to see if I could use somatic techniques to replicate that alien culture. So that was the question I started with. Or it might be that I want people to have some certain experience. So that's what I start with. A lot of people start with like a fictional world that they would want to explore, which I think I also do in some respect. So I tend to redesign every run of my LARPs depending on the site that it is going to be in, which is creates a lot of work for me. But I think that's so important to think about your surroundings. And I think, yeah, I mean, you could design things specifically for a specific site as well. I think I just tend to adapt what I have to whatever site that it's in, or I try to as much as possible. Documentation, I have a very contentious role with. I don't really like it in terms of LARP because number one, the experience is like internal in each. That's what I'm designing, is like kind of the internal landscape in that. I mean, I'm not, or yeah, I'm creating these external conditions for internal experience, and that's hard to document from the outside. I think that LARPers themselves can document their own journey, which I think is really interesting. I think that to me is more interesting, like the artifacts of the LARP, like the props and the scenography and the artifacts generated in the LARP from the players and their own experience, or like deconstructing their experience afterwards, like maybe writing a story of what they've done. But you can use it, of course you can like make a film of a LARP. It's tricky because there's a lot of different stories happening all at once. You can, take pictures. I personally, I just want people to focus on their experience. And I think there's something about LARP which is it's kind of a black box in a way, like it happens, what happens in the LARP stays in the LARP, like. And also, I just think we live in such a surveillance society. We're so used to being documented all the time. Like, it's nice to have this space of interaction where it can be free of that. And I do think, yeah, like the script itself. So I do make scripts. It's not necessarily, it's not necessary to make a script for a LARP, but it's helpful. And then I am experimenting with that as a like form of prose or narrative itself. So that is what I did in this script, sort of. I don't know how successful it is. I can also send that as a PDF if anyone's interested. But yeah, I think they can be like an artifact in the same way that a performance score could be, for sure.
Thanks. And
Yeah,
yes,
great question.
I'm interested in receiving a PDF. Also, you mentioned the paper before. I was also curious to read it. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Maybe Susan, if it's fine with you, I can do an email thread with you also and all the participants, and you can share material afterwards.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Is there more questions in the audience? Okay, everyone is silent.
Yeah, I was wondering, maybe because I saw connections with LARPing and chaos, what your thoughts are about that?
Oh, like elaborate on the connections to chaos that you see.
Because I feel like LARPing is maybe a tool to create chaos in order, or to make new combinations, to deconstruct, combine new. And yeah, I was thinking about like it's maybe a space where you can let in the chaos and create something with it. Yeah, I was just interested in that.
Yeah. Well, my experience as a LARPer, I never LARPed before I started designing them. And it can be very chaotic to LARP, and I think my fellow LARPers could agree, especially if you're in a small space and it's the shorter the LARP is, the more chaotic it might tend to be. You can do a LARP more like a sandbox, so you can just let your LARPers go into this world with these tools and just see what they'll do with it. So I think that has some correlation. And yeah, I mean, like I said, like if there's a bunch of different storylines happening all at once, like it can become very chaotic outside your own trajectory or storyline. In terms of, yeah, I mean, I think like as a designer, it's very, the design process is kind of orderly in a way. I mean, it can be very obscure. Like, I don't know, I've kind of got it down after 5 years. So I feel like, but at first, designing a LARP was chaotic because there's so many different layers to have. There's like logistics to deal with, behavior, like food, like senses, like the physical safety of your players, the story, the character, like there's so much to deal with. And then you kind of hone in and you make this script, and that's very much like an algorithm or like a computer program in a way. And then you give it to these unknown agents, maybe not unknown, but they're unpredictable. And then they do whatever they want with it. And so sometimes I've developed techniques that did not, the players did not interpret it any way at all that I intended it to be used, but they still used it, and they still made something happen. So I think like, I don't know, my partner calls me like an undesigner because I really I can't design for control. Like I can only design for freedom in a way because that's just what happens. You just like give it, you pass it off, and then people do whatever they want with it for however long you've decided the LARP's going to be. So I've never really used the word chaos, but I think maybe those are some things that are close to what you have brought up. I don't know.
Thank you. That was interesting. I also like the term undesigner.
Yeah. I think there's probably a lot of other undesigners on this call.
Yeah, it's a good term. I think maybe we should call ourselves hackers and undesigners from
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that also something that I personally struggle with when running a LARP or like a role play session is time. Is always like a bit of a yeah, like you time things and then yeah, it's really hard to keep things in the time span. But I feel like maybe it's a bit similar to any kind of like workshop situations where it's like really hard to get people to stick within the constraint of time.
And I think LARP is especially time consuming because it does take a while to get people comfortable enough to do this kind of vulnerable process. Like we're not so used to doing pretend play anymore with other adults. So that, and then especially if the LARP is more embodied and more, there is this like kind of time factor, and it takes time to figure out like how to LARP and who you are as a LARPer and like what is LARP. But it's interesting to think of like time is definitely an arrow that the LARP has to follow, and that can be difficult. Yeah.
Lama, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation and your elaborations. I wanted to ask if you could also elaborate a little bit more about how you use somatics and the body in prototyping. I cannot really visualize it, so I'm like curious on like the process maybe, or some like your insights on it.
Well, I just try to incorporate somatics into everything I do and present these days. So it's a holistic approach. So, it's a part of how I facilitate groups. It's a part of how I do research. It's a part of how I work. So I think I see a lot of my LARPs as prototypes in a way. Like on one level, like prototyping, how can somatics be integrated into our social interactions and social tools? And then I think these LARPs that I've done, like with the AI, kind of, I had an idea of like what would a qualitative coding language be that's somatically based, and then I prototyped it with these willing, I hope, participants. And I think that the word, I think, is perhaps problematic, especially it seems problematic, especially for students who are paying to be in a class, and then I'm like, I'm prototyping or I'm playtesting, but it's just like a basic nature of my work is like every run is like a prototype in a way for the next run, or practice for the next one, and it is like my practice and my research is cumulative. Like it's each LARP adds to the next LARP, basically. So like that's a general way I've done it. I would say that I am hoping that I can do more work with, actual designers in whatever, like robotics would really be fun to integrate it more into those kind of research techniques. But I would say it's more of a general principle. Answers your question.
Yeah. So robotics and AI is not always part of your LARPing or your
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they came to be like as you said in your process, your accumulative process. And
yeah, I mean, I think in general there's definitely a lot of my LARPs that deal with intelligence, like different forms of intelligence. So there's like alien intelligence, like animal intelligence, different forms of human intelligence, and mechanical intelligence, or artificial or whatever. But like intelligence as an experience, I guess. And how can it be more inclusive, like this term, I guess. And I don't know, I'm just trying. I have a big issue with like the dualistic nature of Western culture and how it's the source of a lot of huge issues for the whole world now. And so for me, that's the kind of like base reason of why I'm doing these things, is that I do want there to be a kind of non-hierarchical view of like the intelligence of an animal or a human or a baby or a robot or AI, or, an indigenous culture versus like a quote unquote, whatever. I'm not even going to use the word, like whatever we think that we are or not, or like just that we aren't, there aren't, just trying to like break down the false binaries and like false segregations and hierarchies between them all. So that's why they get in there. Plus I do like technology, and I find I'm just fascinated by especially soft robotics.
Thank you so much, Susan. I don't know, Lama, you wanted to ask another question, or?
no, I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I think for a matter of time, maybe we can stop this question moment, but I will share your contact maybe after the workshop in the email thread. And if anyone has more questions or if you want to share your resources, the article you were talking about and the script, that would be really nice. And I can share also the links that I've shared here, the Nordic LARP and chamber games that you mentioned during your talk.
Yeah.
And maybe we can take a 5-minute break to do whatever we need to do in 5 minutes, and come back here for the next part that is going to be more interactive, if that's fine for everyone. So it's like now 15:18 on my computer. We can say that we're back at 15:25, 7 minutes. Cigarette for those who smoke but do not smoke. And you can make yourself a tea, or see you back in 5 minutes then.
Thank you,
and thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you, Juliette.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Have fun.
Thank you.